You set the goal. You felt it. You meant it. And for a few days, maybe even a few weeks, you were on fire. Then something shifted. Life didn't care about your timeline. Work got loud. Sleep got short. And suddenly the habit that you were so certain about became the thing that you'd just get back to when things calmed down. But they didn't calm down, did they? Here's what I want you to understand before we go any further. That story isn't about your willpower. It isn't about your level of commitment. It's about the fact that you built your behavior change on the most unreliable foundation available to you. You build it on motivation. And motivation, as I'm going to show you today, is the worst possible business partner that you'll ever have. In this episode, we're going to walk through why motivation fails predictably, what systems actually are, and why they work, even when you don't want them to. We're going to cover the 3 pillars of habit design that make behavior stick without requiring constant effort, and the specific steps to build your first real system before the episode is even over. You're in the right place, so let's get into it. I want to tell you about a pattern that I've seen play out across organizations, across roles, across industries. It doesn't matter if you're running a small business, leading a team of 50, or just trying to build better habits as an individual. The story is almost always the same. Someone decides to make a change. Maybe it's a professional development goal. Maybe it's a health habit. Maybe it's a commitment to being a more consistent leader. The intention is real. The desire is genuine. Day 1, they're unstoppable. Day 5, they're solid. Day 10, life starts pushing back. And somewhere between day 12 and day 20, the behavior starts slipping. Not because they stopped caring, because they stopped feeling it. The gap between caring about something and feeling like doing it, that's the gap that kills most goals. And almost everyone tries to close it the same wrong way. They try to generate more motivation. They'll reread the book. They'll rewatch the inspiring video. They'll set more reminders and make more notes that they make bigger and more dramatic so that the stakes feel higher. And maybe it works for a day or two, but the underlying problem hasn't changed. They're still running on an emotional fuel source that has a leak in the tank. So we need to define what motivation actually is. And let's be precise about this, because motivation gets romanticized often in ways that actually make it harder to use well. Motivation is an emotional state. Specifically, it's a temporary increase in willingness to act toward a goal. Now, that's useful and that's real, but emotional states are, by definition, transient. They come and go based on things like sleep quality, stress levels, blood sugar, the last conversation that you had, and honestly, whether the weather is good or not. None of those things care about your goals and your desires. The brain science here is actually pretty clear. When you encounter a new goal, your brain releases dopamine. That dopamine is responsible for the drive and the excitement that you feel at the start of something new. But the brain habituates quickly. The thing that was new and exciting on day 1 isn't new and exciting on day 20. The dopamine signal just fades. And without the neurochemical tailwind, the behavior just starts to feel like work. Now, this isn't a character flaw. It's just how brains work. The problem is that our culture has spent decades telling us that if we aren't motivated, it's because we didn't want it badly enough. That narrative is just plain wrong. And it's not just wrong, it's actively harmful. It makes people feel like personal failures when they're actually just experiencing a completely normal neurological process. Here's a specific profile that I want to talk about because it might be uncomfortably familiar for more than one of you. High performers. They tend to have an unusually strong ability to generate short bursts of intense effort. They've built entire careers on it. When something matters, they push, they stay late, they go hard, they deliver. And because that pattern works in the short term, they assume that it works for habits as well. And here's the hard truth, it doesn't. And here's why. Short term, intense effort is a sprint strategy. Habit formation is a marathon. The same qualities that make someone a strong performer in a crisis, things like the ability to override discomfort, or to push through fatigue, or to sustain focus under pressure, actually work against long-term habit formation when they are applied the wrong way. That same high performer sets a standard so high that anything less than perfect feels like absolute failure. When they miss a day, they don't just scale back, they abandon. The mantra is, if I can't do it right, I won't do it at all. And that all or nothing thinking is the enemy of consistency. And consistency is the only thing that actually builds a habit. There's a cognitive bias that researchers call the planning fallacy, and it describes our tendency to underestimate how long tasks will take and overestimate our future motivation and energy. You build the plan assuming that you'll have the same drive and determination on day 30 that you had on day 1. You schedule the habit for 6 a.m., assuming that you'll feel like a 6 a.m. person 3 weeks from now after a rough stretch at work. And let's be honest, you won't. Or at least you can't count on it. This is why detailed plans so often fail. Not because the plan was wrong, but because the plan was built for the best version of you. And the best version of you isn't available every single day. Real systems account for the bad days. They're built for the version of you who's tired, who's stressed, and who's running on 3 to 4 hours of sleep. Let me describe something else that probably sounds familiar to most of us, and we'll call it the calendar trap. You block the time out on the calendar, you set the reminder, you write the goal in the notes, Tuesday, 7 a.m., 30 minutes of professional development or whatever else it is. You feel good about it. You made a commitment. And then Tuesday at 7 a.m. arrives. The reminder goes off. And then you don't have the material pulled up. You don't know exactly what you're supposed to be working on. The laptop takes 2 minutes to boot up. And by the time it's ready, you've already checked 3 emails and your brain is somewhere else entirely. That calendar entry was not a system. It was a reminder. A reminder is something that should happen, but should happen and will happen are separated by infrastructure that most people just never build. A system is what happens between the reminder and the result. It's the material already pulled up, the document already open. The 30-minute structure is already mapped out so that when 7 a.m. arrives on Tuesday, the only thing you have to do is show up and follow the path. I want to give you a concrete ground level example of what the difference between intention and system looks like in practice. So just stick with me on this. As has become our custom, we'll use Toby's Taco Truck, a single person food truck operation with one operator. The truck launches every day at 11 a.m. and shuts down at 7 p.m. The success of every single service day hinges on what happens between 5 a.m. and 11 a.m. during prep. In the early days of the food truck, prep was driven by energy and enthusiasm. A good morning, sharp knives were already in place. Portion control was tight. Setup is beautiful. Now, a rough night, there were disorganized containers, slower line speed, more mistakes. The food itself was always good, but the execution was inconsistent. Customers couldn't predict what version of the taco truck they'd get on any given day. So the turning point wasn't a new recipe or a better ingredient supplier. It was a laminated checklist mounted inside on the truck door. Every prep step was in sequence. Every ingredient was assigned a container position. Every tool was returned to a specific location after its use. The opening routine was scripted to the minute. From that point forward, The quality of the service was no longer correlated with how the operator felt that morning. The checklist ran whether it was a great morning or a terrible one. The system didn't need the operator to be inspired. It just needed them to be present and follow the instructions. That checklist, as simple as it sounds, is a system. And that principle scales from a taco truck to a Fortune 500 company. Before we move on to solutions, I want to name the three most common structural reasons that habits fail. Now, these aren't motivational reasons. They're structural ones. The first one is ambiguous cues. If the habit is, well, I'll work out more. Well, when? Where? After what? Triggered by what? That's an ambiguous intention that requires a fresh decision every single time. Every decision requires willpower. And when willpower is low, which it will be, the habit loses the path of least resistance. The second is high friction. The gap between you and the behavior is just too wide. The gym bag isn't already packed. The book isn't where the phone is. The healthy food isn't prepped. Each of those gaps is a small barrier, and small barriers matter more than people think. Research on behavior change consistently shows that even small amounts of friction can dramatically cut habit adoption rates. And the third is outcome-based identity. If your habit is, I'm going to lose 20 pounds, well, when the 20 pounds are gone, or when you decide the 20 pounds aren't coming off, the reason to keep going just disappears. Habits anchored to outcomes are as temporary as the outcomes themselves. Habits that are anchored to identity hit a little different. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. So let's get you the tools to fix this. The three pillars of habit design. Pillar number one is cue clarity. The cue is the trigger that initiates the habit. Without a strong cue, the habit has no starting gun. And without a starting gun, you're just waiting for the moment that you feel like beginning, which, as we've already established, is not a reliable arrival. Effective cues have three properties. They are specific, meaning that they're tied to a precise time, place, or preceding action. They're consistent, meaning that they occur reliably enough to build a coordinated and conditioned response. And they're contextually attached, meaning that they live in the same environment where the habit will occur. The most powerful cue structure is what habit researchers call implementation intention. The formula is simple. When X happens, I will do Y. Not, well, I should do Y, or I want to do Y. It's when X happens, I will do Y. The specificity of when is what makes it work. As an example, when I sit down at my desk with my morning coffee, I open my planning document before checking email. That is an implementation intention. It attaches the new behavior to an existing behavior, and it uses an action that you already take reliably as the trigger for the action that you want to build. This is sometimes also called habit stacking, and it's one of the most effective tools in behavior design. Let me give you an example from a professional context. A department manager wanted to build the habit of giving one piece of specific positive feedback to a team member every day, not general praise, specific, observed, behavior-based feedback. The problem was that the intention kept getting lost in the noise of the busy workday. The fix in that case was a cue. Every morning at the start of the team stand-up meeting, she placed a single sticky note on the corner of her notebook. That sticky note was the cue. Before the stand-up ended, the note had to have a name on it. And by the end of the day, that name got the feedback. Within 3 weeks, she didn't need the sticky note anymore. The behavior had just become ingrained and part of her day-to-day and how she led. The cue had done its job. Pillar number two is friction management. Friction, as we already mentioned, is the distance between you and the behavior. Every step between you and the habit is a toll booth, and every toll booth is an opportunity to turn back. Good system design reduces friction for desired behaviors and increases friction for competing ones. This is sometimes called environmental design, and it's one of the most underutilized tools in professional development. Think about the environment where your most important habits are supposed to happen. Is it set up to support them or to create distractions or obstacles? Is the first thing you reach for in the morning a phone or a purpose? Is the workspace designed for focus or distractions? These aren't rhetorical questions. The answers tell you where your system is lacking. Here's a practical example. A sales professional wanted to spend the first 30 minutes of every day on customer outreach rather than inbox management. Every day, the inbox seemed to win, not because the outreach mattered less, but because the inbox was right there, already open, already loaded, already begging for attention. So the fix here was friction management. The email client was removed from the browser bookmark bar. The CRM was set as the browser's homepage. The outreach script was written the night before and was sitting open on the screen. The inbox remained closed until 9 a.m. Within 2 weeks, the habit was locked in, not because the professional had changed, but because the path of least resistance now led to the right behavior. Two additional friction tactics worth naming: the 2-minute rule and the never miss twice principle. The 2-minute rule says that if you're struggling to start, scale the habit down until it takes less than 2 minutes. That's not because 2 minutes is enough, but because starting is often the hardest part. A habit you start and maintain is better than one you skip entirely. The never miss twice principle says exactly what it sounds like. Missing once is an accident. Missing twice is the start of a new pattern. Give yourself permission for the bad day or for life to get in the way sometimes. Don't give yourself permission for the bad week. And finally, pillar 3 is identity anchoring. This is the one that changes everything, and it's the one that most people never reach because they're so focused on the habit's tactical mechanics that they never really address the foundation beneath it. Habits that are built on outcomes are fragile. The outcome is achieved or it isn't. And either way, the motivation shifts. Habits that are built on identity are durable because they're not about what you're trying to do, they're about who you are choosing to be. Now, that distinction sounds philosophical, but it has some very practical consequences. When someone is asked, "Do you smoke?" and they answer, "Well, I'm trying to quit," that answer is full of tension. It implies that somewhere inside of them, the smoker still exists and is being suppressed. But when someone answers plainly, "I don't," there's no tension. The behavior doesn't match who they are. There's quite a bit of research out there on this already, and James Clear writes extensively about this in the context of habit formation. The most durable habits are built when the behavior becomes evidence of an identity rather than just a means to an end. Every time that you act consistently with your identity, you vote for that version of yourself. And over time, those votes accumulate into a clear self-image that the behavior naturally expresses. In a leadership context, this translates directly. A leader who says, "I'm trying to be more present with my team," is fighting an uphill battle. A leader who says, "I'm someone who gives full attention when a team member speaks to me," has framed the behavior as an expression of character, not an item on a list. Before you build any system, answer this one question: who is the person who does this behavior automatically as a matter of course, without needing to be reminded? Describe that person in detail. And then ask yourself, what that person's daily habits look like. Build toward that identity, and the individual habits become a natural expression rather than isolated behavior that you're trying to force. I want to give you a complete framework that you can start using today on the habit that you've been trying to build and keep failing at. Not eventually, today. Step number 1 is to name the cue. What specific event, time, or action will trigger the behavior? It needs to be something that happens reliably, something already in your environment. Connect the new behavior to that anchor point. Write it out in the when X, I will Y format, and then put it somewhere visible. Step number 2 is to reduce friction. What is the smallest version of this behavior that still counts? If the full habit is 30 minutes of writing, can you start by opening the document and writing a couple sentences? If the full habit is a full morning workout, can you start by just putting on the shoes? Scale the habit down until starting is effortless. Extension follows naturally. Then take a look at your environment. What's making this hard? What obstacle consistently appears between you and the behavior? Remove it or work around it. Set up your environment tonight for the version of you who will be tired tomorrow morning. Step number 3 is to anchor the identity. Write this out. I am someone who insert behavior because insert value. Keep it honest and keep it specific. I am someone who prepares for every one-on-one meeting because I believe that my team members deserve my full attention. That right there is an identity statement. Put it where you'll see it when the habit fires. Step number 4 is to close the exit. What usually causes you to skip the habit? And be honest. Is it checking email first? Is it a busy morning that makes the habit just feel optional? If your justification is that you'll make up for it later, find the off-ramp and remove it. And don't remove it with willpower. Remove it with structure. If you check your email first, make your email inaccessible until the habit is complete. If busy mornings often derail you, prep everything the night before so there are 0 decisions to make. I want to leave you with something that is easy to understand intellectually and surprisingly hard to appreciate emotionally until you've experienced it. A 1% improvement in anything is nearly invisible on any given day. You can't feel the difference between today and yesterday if you've improved whatever it is by 1%. But compounded over a year, a 1% daily improvement produces a result that is 37 times better than where you started. Not 37%, 37 times better. The math exercise there is the easy part. The hard part is staying with the system on the days when you can't see or feel the progress. The habit that's been running for 3 weeks with no visible results is building something. The consistency itself is the asset being built. This is why systems outperform motivation over time. Motivation fluctuates. Consistency compounds. And consistency only comes from systems that run regardless of how you feel on any given day. Here's what I want you to take from this particular episode. Motivation is real and it's useful. It'll show up sometimes and carry you further than you expected, but it's not a foundation. It's a tailwind when it's there and an excuse when it isn't. Systems, on the other hand, are different. A system doesn't ask how you feel. It just runs. And if you design it well, it produces results that compound over time into something that looks from the outside like exceptional discipline or an unusual amount of willpower. But from the inside, it just looks like Tuesday. It looks like following the path that you already laid out. Build the system, let it run, and trust the process enough to stay with it on the days when you can't see the progress. I'm Toby Hoy. Thanks for spending some time with me today on Toby Talks. You can find everything, the blog, the podcast episodes, the social links, everything at toby-talks.com. If this episode was useful, please share it with someone who's stuck in the I'll start Monday cycle. It might be the most practical thing you do for them all week.